Coming up in this week's episode, we take a look at Liverpool's title-winning season, who can qualify for the Champions League with 4 teams trying to fill 2 positions. We look at the action at Stamford Bridge from last week as Chelsea took on Manchester City. Liam has his teaser at the ready and has another story for us. And Chris has a Liverpool special in the Wonders of White. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to episode 24 of View from the Sideline podcast. It's Chris here and Liam's here. Hello, Liam.
Good evening, Chris. How you doing?
I'm all right, thanks, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you.
Despite more losses?
Yeah, it's every week, isn't it? Every week. Every week I tell you I'm not doing bad when really I'm dying inside because it's just another poor performance. But yeah, you're a bit happier than me, though.
Well, I've yet to see us lose for about 6 months, so it's pretty good at the moment. I'm not going to lie, but yeah, very interesting results this weekend. So we'll obviously go into that in a little bit. But I believe you have another teaser this week.
I do, Chris. So it was a little bit too difficult last week. So rather than putting anything in an order, this week what I want you to do is to name the Premier League's top 5 French goal scorers. So that's obviously since 1992. Who are the top French goal scorers in the Premier League? Okay. So at the end, I'll come back for 5 names.
Well, I think 2 or 3 already spring to mind. So hopefully they're correct. But yeah, I'll have a think about that, and we'll try and get them a little bit later on. So we'll go into our talking points this week. The first one, the crowning of new Premier League champions. And it's a first, obviously, for Liverpool since the Premier League started. But we probably all could have called this probably at Christmas. Don't know about you, Liam, but
if not,
it feels like we have been saying Liverpool are going to win the league for a very long time now. And
a very, very long
finally,
time. Yeah.
They got over the finish line there. But what can you say, really, other than all round very much deserving of winning that title, being by far the best team in the Premier League, probably the only Premier League team other than probably Sheffield United that have actually played well consistently and have probably gone above and beyond of what they probably thought they could.
Yes, absolutely. You look at, if you take last year into consideration as well, I think over the last 2 seasons, really, I know Man City won it last year, but Liverpool were level with them. And then this year they've just blown them out of the water, really. To go 1 loss throughout the entire season, would you put them up there with the great Premier League teams, do you think, Chris?
I'd say it's you have to. I think you have to, really. I wouldn't go as far as saying they were better than the Arsenal Invincibles, but I would say that probably not too far behind them. And obviously the Arsenal Invincibles probably one of the best teams to grace any league. But yeah, not too far behind, I would say. Do you think they are?
I was thinking the same thing, to be honest. I was trying to sort of put it in a bit of perspective earlier today, and I don't know who from that Liverpool team at the moment I would put in Arsenal's Invincibles to make them better. But I look at all the other good teams. I look at Mourinho's Chelsea first time round. I'm looking at the United treble winning season, and I think that there are players in Liverpool's side who more than match those teams. I think Arsenal's Invincibles, you sort of take them as an anomaly. I don't know how they managed to do that season, but yeah, I think they are up there probably with the best teams ever now, especially if they go on next year. Who knows, they might win 2 or 3 in a row. I can't see anyone competing against them. I don't know about you.
Well, this is the question that I've seen put to a few people now of, is this going to be a sort of dominance from Liverpool in the next few years? You already look at next season, and they're going to be clear favourites. Manchester City are going to need to sign at least 3 or 4 new players, I think, to get anywhere near Liverpool, and that's Manchester City. The rest of the teams in there, like Chelsea, Man United, they're going to have to play some pretty good football and make some pretty good signings, I think, to even compete with Liverpool. I saw Chelsea beat them in the FA Cup, but it's the games, obviously, where sort of Chelsea have struggled this season against the lower teams in the league, where Liverpool haven't. And I think a lot of the big teams have struggled against sort of mid-table teams this season, and I think that's probably one factor as to why Liverpool are so far in front. And you've got to single a few players out. One, I never thought I'd say this, but Jordan Henderson. What a key player he is in that squad, and when he is not in that squad, they don't look as strong in midfield as what they do when he's in there. I think you'd have to say probably, if not player of the season, I think in the Premier League, Henderson. I think anyone that comes close to him is going to be a Liverpool player anyway. But I'd say he's probably one of the most improved midfielders I've seen in a few years.
It's interesting because obviously he was touted as the next Gerrard for such a long time, and almost to the point where it was becoming a little bit of a joke, I think, especially when Gerrard left 4 or 5 years ago now. A lot of people questioned whether Henderson had enough, whether they needed to buy anybody else. But I actually think probably, again, I'm looking over 2 years, maybe even longer. I think he's improved no end, and he's got to be nearing 30 now. I think is he 28, 29, something like that. Yeah. So it's been steady, but he's been phenomenal this season. And like you say, for Player of the Year, I think you're looking at him. I think you're maybe looking at obviously Van Dijk would be probably one of the names, and I think Mane as well.
Yeah.
Who I think he's just kicked it onto another level. I mean, we've seen a lot of Southampton players go to Liverpool over the last 4 or 5 years, and either sort of maintain where they were at Southampton and not kick on a level. But I didn't really see Mane really getting that next step up, but he's proved me wrong time and time again. I think he's a phenomenal player. Obviously his pace helps, but his decision making in the final third, I think he knows when to pass, he knows when to shoot, and that complements obviously with Firmino as well, who he doesn't get the headlines as much, Firmino, as the other two in the front three, but he's just as important. I think he allows them to be better players. So if they can keep the core of their squad, it'll be interesting. I think Barcelona have sniffed a few of their players over recent years with Suarez and Coutinho. It'll be interesting to see how many they can keep and whether the pull of a Barcelona or Real Madrid might tempt people away.
But I think when you look at sort of Suarez and Coutinho, when they left, Liverpool should have been winning the league, and I think they're at a point now where they don't generally have to sell their best players, and I don't think that their best players would want to leave. And you'd almost be looking at Liverpool buying sort of Barcelona players and Real Madrid players rather than the other way around.
I think
I'd have to say right. I agree with the Mane comment. I think overall I think he's the best of the three at the top that they play. I think he got overshadowed by Salah with goals last season, but I think overall he brings a bit more to the table than what Salah does. And like you said, Firmino he's sort of the dark horse of that team. He keeps everything going. That sort of, he's not really an out and out striker. He's more of like that sort of centre forward, the false nine sort of player. But
his work rate is phenomenal as well. I think if you focus on him, the way sort of he knows when to drop off to make the space for the other two, but he also knows when to press and things like that. It's just they've got a good link up obviously between the three of them, and they've been a joy to watch this year. Actually, I hope that they do manage to keep those three together. But like you say, what I thought was interesting was that Liverpool have been sort of maybe classed as a bit of a selling club in getting rid of players to Barcelona over the years and things like that recently, but they actually didn't buy much. And I think where Man City obviously won the title the season before, and they went out and splashed on their record transfer and bringing Rodri in for 50 odd million and those kind of things. And Liverpool, I think they only really spent money on Minamino in January, and that was probably about it. There wasn't much in terms of bolstering the squad, and I think maybe that gave the players that did finish second that confidence to say, well, he believes that we can do this and we're all hungry for it, and it kicked him on to do obviously incredible things this year.
He just has progressively added to the squad over sort of the 5 years he's been there. And I think he knew that they were literally on the obviously last season they were so close. And his probably thought process behind it was probably thought, well, if we can just play like this again, but better, obviously with the players knowing each other a lot better, I think that he knew that he had sort of a winning sort of combination there. But yeah, it'd be good to
his
see what
record in the
happens.
transfer window has been great as well. I was looking at his transfers and I could only really see Karius and Klavan that were players that he'd signed that hadn't done much. I think every single other player he bought had played a big part in this season, which is incredible for a manager in this day and age when you think how many people are bought and don't make it. It's testament to the scouts, I suppose, of Liverpool for finding them.
But so congratulations to Liverpool winning the league. So we're going to look a bit further down. I say further down, points wise is a lot further down. So the fight for the fourth place. This was something that you wanted to talk about because one team in particular have sort of taken your fancy since the restart.
Yeah, so obviously, being a Villa fan, I watched the Wolves-Villa game this week, and I was quite impressed by Wolves. They didn't. I mean, I don't actually think they got out of first gear, to be honest, but they never really looked threatened. I was impressed with it. Obviously, Neves has got a lot of headlines and Jimenez up front, but I think all round as a team, you even look at their wing backs. I think Johnny had a very good game at the weekend. Defensively, they look pretty sound. Dendoncker obviously got the goal. I know he's not the quickest of midfielders, but he's always a bit of a nuisance. He's quite tall as well. In set pieces, he's dangerous. But I was really impressed with how Wolves played. And looking at the table, other than Liverpool, it's Wolves that have actually lost the least games. They've only lost 6 games all year. They've drawn too many, which I think was a bit of a problem for them last year. But we were talking last week, obviously, about Leicester and Chelsea breaking into the top 4. I still think Chelsea have got more than enough. They obviously played very well against Man City, which we'll touch on in a bit. But I actually could see Wolves overtaking Leicester if they keep up this trajectory. I don't know if you've seen much of them recently.
Yeah, well, I saw bits of the Villa game at the weekend. They are a very strong side. There's no doubt about it, and they've got some really, really good players. Their link-up play between, I think it's been highlighted that Adama Traore and Jimenez have. I think they're not too far off breaking a Premier League record of the amount of assists and goals they've created for each other this season. I think they're not too far off breaking that record. So they've kind of got a good thing going forward. I'd say defensively sometimes they do look a bit shaky, but when you look at minutes played, I think it was Connor Cody's played every single minute of the Premier League this season. So has Rui Patricio, and I think there's 3 Wolves players that have, and I think they're the only 3 players that have played every single minute of any club. So I think he's kind of kept the same sort of team as well.
Yeah, I think he's kept it pretty stable at the back. I mean, there wasn't much attacking intent from Villa to really test them, but what they did have to do, they did solidly. They never really looked in danger of conceding anything. But I have been impressed with them all season, to be honest. And I've seen obviously bits in Europe as well, and they've been good out there. But yeah, I just thought off the back of what we were talking about last week with Leicester and Chelsea seemingly clear for the Champions League places. I thought it'd be interesting to give Wolves a bit of a shout, and I don't see why in the next few games, they can't kick on and get that final top four spot. They actually remind me tactically a little bit. I think formation-wise, they're similar to Liverpool. Wide men that sort of cut inside, get a lot of assists and also chip in with goals as well. They're high pressing, high tempo, and yeah, I just think they play some very attractive football. And it pains me to say it, obviously. I'm a Villa fan. I shouldn't ever talk about Wolves in glowing terms, but yeah, you can't help but appreciate what Espirito Santo has done. I think it might be a matter of time before he gets a big role. I don't know about you, Chris.
He's definitely a capable manager, yeah. And I think when he wasn't, I know when he joined Wolves, he wasn't the biggest name that they could have chosen, I don't think, at the time. But I think he's definitely shown that with the right sort of backing, he can definitely build a very handy team. But yeah, I think it is, like you said, only a matter of time before maybe he does move on. I don't think it'll be in the Premier League. I think he's probably more, maybe if it was a big club, maybe he's suited sort of abroad somewhere. But I suppose we'll just have to wait and see. But just looking at their fixtures that they've got left, they've got Arsenal coming up next, Sheffield United, Everton, Burnley, Crystal Palace and Chelsea. So they have got a few tricky games left. That one against Chelsea on the last day of the season could be quite crucial for them. So
that could be a very big game for them. Yeah. But I mean, you look at Arsenal; they've obviously been quite poor since the restart.
I can't see them Sheffield United.
Everton, Burnley, Palace, all winnable games for them. And then Chelsea. It's going to be a big game on the last day of the season for them. I'm not sure what Leicester's running looks like actually, they've
got Everton, Palace, Arsenal, Bournemouth, Sheffield United in the last two games against Tottenham and Man United.
So it's not there's a bit of both in there for them.
So the four teams that I think that will fight for the Champions League spots are Leicester, Chelsea, Man United, and Wolves, and they're playing each other on the last day of the season.
That will be an interesting day for the final. The final place. That's good.
So if they're all all within a couple of points of each other, it could be quite a last day of the season. Unfortunately for Tottenham, I just don't think that they are only 4 points behind Man United, but I think it's too much now.
See them. I think it is.
I think inconsistencies ruin their season, to be fair, and to be quite honest with you, if Palace or Burnley went tonight, they'll be on the same points as Tottenham. So, would you include them in that as well? So I think they're too far behind, to be fair now. So
I think they obviously had poor form early on. Whether that should have cost Pochettino his job, I don't know. But I think it's just inconsistencies. There's just been games this season where you've expected them to walk it and they've not turned up. So I think I think there's going to be a big overhaul for Spurs in the summer. We all know Mourinho likes to buy a lot of players. So
will he get the money? I think that's the.
Well, this is the thing. I don't know why he joined because Levy's known for being a bit stingy, isn't he? But we'll see.
I know one way they could get a bit of money, but it means selling Harry Kane.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll want to do that. Anyway, we'll move on to last week's game, Man City Chelsea. We wanted to talk about this one because of the implications the game had. It was one of the biggest games of the season, not necessarily for either team that was involved. So, but obviously as a Chelsea fan, I thought it was a very, very good performance, and I thought that we kind of carried on from the sort of games we've already played since the restart. And obviously Pulisic's goal Bit of a mess up from I think it was Mendy Gundogan. Was it Gundogan? I think it
Yeah,
was. Yeah, they kind of got in each
really
other's
well taken though.
but yeah, he kind of ran on with it and obviously placed it around Edison, which was really good. And then obviously the penalty, which at first I think it was I thought it was quite hard to say. I didn't realise he actually Fernandinho had handballed it on the line. But then the commentators mentioned it, and I thought, well, maybe he had. And then obviously they showed the replay, and it was obviously clear to see. But one thing I did want to talk about is actually Man City's defence. When Chelsea were on the attack, they looked so out of place. I don't know whether it's because they've kind of made a lot of changes to their back four recently, or whether it was literally just since Company has left, they've not been the same. And personally, a lot was expected of Mendy when he signed for Manchester City, but going forward, he's not actually too bad. But I don't really see a huge amount of defence, like sort of quality that he's got. He almost looks very lost when he's defending. But going forward, he's not too bad. He almost looks like he'd suit more of sort of a winger than he would actually a defender. But not too sure.
Yeah, I think he's positionally is a bit suspect. I do think they miss Company, but I think what happened, we saw it in the Pulisic goal in a way. Whenever they come up against a pacey striker, I don't think the central defence have enough pace. I think they rely a lot on Edison coming out and being that sweeper keeper.
Yeah.
Obviously, it didn't happen in the game that we're talking about because it was, they were on the halfway line, really, weren't they? I think. I mean, they might have even been in your half.
Yeah, they were. They were
as
just
the last line of defence. Yeah, I don't think they've got the pace at centre back to really do that. I know Mendy's quick and I know that Walker's quick, but when Man City are on the attack, they're very much part of it. And there's going to come a time where there is a counter attack from another team, like we saw with Chelsea, and they are going to struggle to get back. I mean, I seem to happen time and time again where City would be happily passing the ball around sort of 35, 40 yards away from your goal, try and make a killer pass. The ball would go here, there, and everywhere. And every time Chelsea looked dangerous going forward because positionally it just seemed like Man City were nowhere. And I think it happened not just for the penalty, but I think there was the Pulisic shot that was off the line. I think Walker just managed to get back.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a matter of inches, wasn't it, really? He was quite fortunate to do that. I think if Pulisic had sort of put any power on that shot, it was a guaranteed goal. But yeah, I do think they miss Company. I think they miss a bit of leadership. I think they don't trust each other at the back as much. We saw obviously the mistake in the Chelsea game, and we see mistakes from Otamendi and Stones in previous games throughout this season. And I think the confidence is maybe gone a little bit in their back four. So I wouldn't be surprised if Guardiola decides in the summer to invest heavily in a couple of centre halves. I think they could really do with it, but I think they've also got to look tactically and say, well, we can't really afford to play a back line that sits on the halfway line against a good side like Chelsea, and they were exposed for it, I think. I mean, I really enjoyed the game as a neutral. It's the best game I've seen since lockdown. I thought it was end-to-end. I thought there was good attacking play by both teams. But I think what it showed was that Chelsea looked really dangerous for next season. I think a lot of people wrote you guys off, no money to spend, a manager with no Premier League experience. And I think a lot of people were not just putting you outside the top four, but saying a mid-table finish would be ideal for you. So, I mean, I fancy you to overtake Leicester. But even if you don't, fourth place is a great achievement. And with the signings you've made already, I think it's only going to get better from here on in. So, yeah, I think it looked good for you guys.
Yeah, it seems to be like the general consensus of we have started really well, obviously since coming back, and Pulisic almost seems like a different player. He had such a good game yesterday as well against Leicester. He was a couple of times he was running at their defence, and he's very, very. It was almost like watching Eden, almost like watching Hazard, a glimpse at stages of it. And I think that's one thing that we have actually missed this season, is that sort of spark of energy. And in the last sort of 2-3 games, I've seen it in him, which is really good to see. He did come off yesterday injured, so I'm hoping that's not. I think Lampard said it was more of like a calf sort of strain, so hopefully he's not out for too long. Obviously, we've got West Ham coming up midweek, so maybe it would be an opportunity just to rest him then. But we have quite a big squad. I think, like you said, a lot of people had written us off, I think, at the start of the season. They were all in that sort of mentality that, we would have to use players that have been out on loan in previous seasons in lower divisions. But it's those players that have actually come through and got us to where we are. Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham, those two obviously stick out in my mind. Mount especially. I think on the ball he's one of our best players.
Yeah. To be honest, I was one of those people writing you off because obviously we'd had Tammy Abraham on loan last year, so I did obviously rate him. He got a lot of goals for us, but I saw a lot of Derby County last year, and he had Mount and Tomori, I think, at Derby last year. Yeah. And I mean, Mount impressed in quite a few games, but you can only tell so much in the Championship. Tomori, for me, really didn't stand out at all. Certainly not in the playoff final. And I was very, very surprised, to be honest, that he actually got started in the first place when he was needed for you guys. But he seems like a completely different player from last year. And Reece James as well. I mean, he played well for Wigan last season, but again, you don't know if they can take that step up. But every single one of them has just blown it out of the water, really.
I think there's a lot of trust as well with Lampard. He, like you said, with Tomori and Mount, he had them obviously when he was at Derby, so he knew, what their best positions were. He knew what they were capable of, so he obviously saw something in them. But yeah, I remember saying at the start of the season, I think it was in pretty much the first podcast we did this season, that we just lost 4-0 to Man United, which was not the greatest of starts. But
no,
I said then, if we got into the top 4, I said we have massively overachieved this season.
Yeah.
And seeing how Leicester, I thought Leicester actually played quite well in the FA Cup yesterday against us, but seeing them and seeing us, I thought second half we were miles better than what they were, and I genuinely think we're only a point behind them. I think we will overtake them, and I looking at our next 5 games, on paper, I would say that we should probably be winning all of them. But I think even if we come out with 3 wins and 2 draws, I still think we're in a very, very good position. So, and obviously next year, like you said, we've got Ziyech and Werner.
Yeah, he obviously signed off in style for Leipzig earlier this week.
Twice, didn't he? Yeah. So 2 very, very good players coming in. And I can only assume there is going to be more to come.
I was going to say, just out of interest, do you think that is all your budget gone, or do you think because you haven't spent? Do you think it's going to be a proper blowout? I think 250 million.
With the Hazard money and the Morata money, you're looking at well over 130, 140 million there. And you think Werner's cost us 49 and Ziyech cost us 36.
Yeah.
So you're probably looking, we've probably still got 50 million in the transfer sort of revenue that we made from selling just 2 players alone, plus what potentially he could have spent last season and this season, and
whatever he sells
exactly
in the summer, obviously.
I reckon it could be another 100, 120 million that you see being spent, whether that's on one player, i.e. Jadon Sancho. Havertz is another one that's been mentioned. He
Yeah,
would
they're
cost
all
around about
attacking
60
minded
or
players
70
though, aren't
million.
they?
Well, you think that we're probably going to lose Pedro. Well, we are losing Pedro,
Yeah,
and Willian. It's not sorted out contract wise. He's obviously they both signed extensions to play to the rest of the season. But I think Willian is holding out on who else might be coming in, because
yeah,
I think
waiting for a
he
better offer.
knows that Ziyech is likely to play,
Yeah,
and that's his position. Whether William moves, he could get, obviously he can play left or right, but I think Pulisic is probably the other sort of winger that they're going to be looking at to be starting as well. I don't think I think sort of centre mid wise, I think we're sorted there. I think if anything, we've probably got too many. Pains me to say it, but I think Jorginho could probably go. I think him and Kante are the same sort of player, and I think unless
yeah.
Kante's heavily injured, I don't think there's any need for him. So, and defence, yeah, we got criticised a lot last season for our defence, but I thought I think generally they've played pretty well this season. I think Rudiger's probably the strongest centre back we've got, probably closely followed by either Christensen or Zuma. Tamori's a good defender, but I think he needs more time. There's a few occasions this season where he's kind of given the ball away in silly places. But yeah, I think Zuma's a good defender, personally. I know he gets criticised a lot, but from what I've seen in this season, he seems like he's matured a lot.
I
And
think he's been good this year.
Mourinho
I
said he
think
was one of the best defenders he ever had. So
maybe I wouldn't go that far, but I have been impressed with him this year. I was impressed with him at Everton, but I think it would be interesting, and I would be, from a neutral perspective, I would be extremely worried to come up against the Chelsea next year, who had signed a proper statement centre back and a new goalkeeper.
maybe
I think you're right. I think
Maldini come out
I
of
think
retirement.
I think in the middle of the field, I think you're right. I think you've got a lot of centre midfielders. You've got a lot of obviously English centre midfielders as well, which is great for the national team. But I would be really interested to see a proper, like Liverpool with Van Dijk, 70 million.
Koulibaly, I think he's probably one of the best could get out there.
Possibly Koulibaly, yeah. I don't see why not. I mean, I don't know. Is Varane happy at Real Madrid? Maybe. Just
Ramos,
really go
mate.
out there.
Imagine Ramos.
Ramos is probably a little bit too old for Lampard, isn't he? But
No, I'd take it.
one year in the Premier League of Sergio Ramos would be, well, you just have a whole year of highlights, wouldn't you? How many red cards would he get in the Premier League? It's just doesn't bear thinking about. He'd be suspended more than he'd play. But
he gets a lot of stick,
Ramos,
doesn't he? But he is one of the best defenders I think there's ever been.
If I'm not going to swear, but the guy is not a nice guy. He's just, I hate him. I hate him so much. I mean, yeah, you can't knock his ability, but he's just a horrible.
Did he break a La Liga record the other day? The highest scoring defender.
He's got a lot of goals for Real Madrid. He has scored so many for them. Well, it's that, and he always pops up in the 93rd minute from a corner or something like that. He's just, he's one of those players that you just hate to play against. Like a Robbie Savage or a Roy Keane or a Vinnie Jones or Jamie Vardy or someone like that. It's just, you get them. I mean, you've had Diego Costa. You know what that's all about. So
yeah, I love Costa.
That's the thing. I mean, that's why Real Madrid fans love him. But yeah, just from an opposition point of view. As much as I would love to see a year of Ramos in the Premier League, I would hate to play against him. Absolutely hate it.
Right. Well, we'll leave it there. So that's sort of the talking points for this week. Now, you did message me before we started, Liam, about a new football that you have seen and I've not seen yet.
Yes.
But I am gonna look at it in part 2.
Yeah, I'd take the opportunity to have a look because I have some thoughts and they're not all great.
Okay, well, we'll finish part one there, and coming back in part two is my reaction to this new football. Liam's got another story for us. We've got the one as a white, and I try and guess these 5 French top Premier League goal scorers. So we'll be back in part two. Hello and welcome back to part two, View from the Sideline podcast. So just before we left in part one, Liam told me about the new football for next season. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but if you just go into Twitter or Facebook and just type in Nike Flight, you'll see the new Premier League football for next season. And I think we've both said
thoughts,
this.
Chris?
It looks like you could have a very good cushioned header with it. It looks like if it hit you on the head, you wouldn't really feel it. I don't know. It looks straight. It looks strange. I don't know why it looks so weird.
I think, so for me, it looks a bit flat. I think it looks like it's been made. So from when I used to play in goal, the gloves that a goalkeeper used to wear, I don't know if it's similar now, but it looks like the inner lining has just been made into a ball. It's very white, very plain, and it looks like the kind of ball that your PE teacher would give you for literally any sport when you're doing PE. So basketball, volleyball, football, all rolled into one. It's just so odd, and it's got hexagons. But no colour.
It looks like it's got loads of coding written on it as well.
Yeah, so it looks like they've put 2021 on it, which is obviously the season it's going to be used. I've never seen that on a football in such big numbers before. But there's little crosses, tiny little targets by the looks of things.
V.006. Even says on there, engineered for precision flight, and it can be all yours for £119 off the Nike website. Wow. I remember when I used to pay about £5 for a football. Nike has spent 8 years working on this football.
I think
they've gone through 68. They went through 68 before they got to this one, apparently.
God, how bad must they have been? I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. Maybe it'll be a grower, but I can't see that being a success, to be honest. But there you go. What do I know about modern football?
It's just really white. It's
really white, isn't it? Really, really white. I don't know what they were thinking
colour on it somewhere. I don't know. Interesting.
Quid for a football. Who'd have thought?
Right. So Liam, have you got a story for us this week?
I do, Chris. So this week's story comes from a league that I think we all know and love, the Pro League Championnat de Football National Division 1. Or as it's more commonly known, the top division of Madagascan football. So, the game that we're focusing on this week takes place in the final 4-team round robin to decide the title of the top division in Madagascar. The game we're looking at features arch rivals AS Adema versus Stade Olympique de Lemien, which I'm going to refer to as SOE from now on for ease. So, in the last round of fixtures, SOE had been held to a 2-2 draw where a controversial late penalty had done away with their 2-1 lead. This draw squandered any chance SOE had to beat AS Adema to the title. So in their following game, they decided to protest the harsh decision by the referee and scored own goals repeatedly. They scored 149 of them. Witnesses said SOE would just kick the ball off, shoot at their own goal, and their keeper would let it go in every single time. Following the match, the Madagascan Football Federation, who knew there was such a thing, They suspended SOE coach and 4 of the SOE players. The harsh thing I thought was that they actually gave warnings to all players involved in the game, including those from the opposition side. They all received an official warning. And the result stands as the largest defeat in the history of professional football of 149-0.
Imagine being that salty to then do that.
You've been stewing on it for a week, and you still think by the time 7 days after the decision, no, we're still going to go through with this. You must have been really, really annoyed with that penalty. And imagine the fans turning up on the day as well. I mean, I don't know how much it costs to go and watch professional football in Madagascar. At least they saw goals. Yeah.
Oh dear! I imagine what they thought when they were just sat there, like the game's about to kicks off, and then their team just starts pummeling own goals. And
what do you do as the opposition? But when it gets to say, I don't know, 43-0, do you just think, well, they're just going to keep doing this? Should we sit down, or are they thinking, is this a tactic?
They're going to get us players was down. Like, just let me score. I could get 100 goals there. That's going to be top goal scorer. Own goals won their league's top scorer that season.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
149 of them. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's your story for this week.
Very good. Very good. Okay, we'll move on to the Wonders of White, although I've called it the Wonders of Red this week.
Oh, very nice rebrand.
Yeah. It's a one-off.
You don't seem too keen.
Yeah. One-off. Okay, so by the title, you can probably already assume that it is Liverpool themed, shall we say. So Jurgen Klopp is the first ever German manager to win the English top division in its 131-year history. So no other German manager has won the league. This one is a bit long and could be confusing if I don't say it right. So 3 of the last 6 seasons has seen the title decided in a match played at Stamford Bridge. So this was Chelsea versus Palace in 14-15, Chelsea versus Spurs in 15-16, and obviously the game that's just happened, Chelsea-Man City. But Chelsea were also involved in a 4th title decider in the 16-17 season, but that was away to West Brom.
Wow.
So
even if you've not been at the top fighting for it yourselves, you've had to say in 4 of the last 5 seasons, was that
4 of the last 6? Yeah.
You just like to feel important, don't you?
Yeah,
that's what it is.
My favourite one has to be the Tottenham one, of course.
Oh yeah, that was brilliant.
Liverpool's title win is Liverpool's title win is the latest the Premier League champions have ever been crowned. That's obviously due to COVID. And the last one is Liverpool can still break a few records. So they could be the team with the most points in the Premier League season, the most points in any of the top 5 European leagues, most wins in English top flight, and the biggest winning margin for English champions. So yeah, they could.
I wouldn't be surprised if they got a few of them as well.
Yeah, I think they'll be notching a few of those up when the season is over. Hopefully, not at Chelsea's expense. Okay. Or Villa's, because I think you've still got to play them, haven't you? So
we have, yes. So I think one of the Villa journalists was saying that when we go to Anfield, we want lockdown to have broken so that we can play a hungover Liverpool under-12 team. So I think that's the general gist of where our feelings are at the moment.
Will they still get a guard of honour?
I think they will. I believe
will it be
Man
like
City
a 2-metre distance guard of honour?
Yeah.
Spanning
really
the whole
guard.
pitch.
Yeah.
That'll be also a record. It'll be the longest guard of honour any team has ever received.
There you go. What honour.
Right. Okay. Your teaser, Liam.
Yes.
So I'm looking for some French goal scorers.
the top 5 French goal scorers in the Premier League. So, yeah, 5 names, 5
Well,
Frenchmen.
I'll get the obvious one out of the way first. So Thierry Henry
Yes,
is.
you've got 175 goals.
I don't suppose you could tell me what position he was. I'm assuming
I
first.
can. I'm going to tell you that he's top of the French goal
He was
scorers.
top. Okay. So other French. So my mind's gone blank now, which is weird. I will say Mr. Eric Cantona.
Eric Cantona is 5th of 5 with 70 Premier League goals. So
Right.
you need the 3 in between, Thierry Henry on 175 and Eric Cantona on 70.
Okay. I've got another name, but I don't think he scored. I'm trying to get the less obvious ones out of the way.
I would argue that you would really be kicking yourself if you didn't get one of them.
Well, Nicolas Anelka is another obvious one.
Nicolas Anelka is second with 125 goals.
So I've got Anelka.
Yep.
Was he the one that I was going to kick myself about?
No.
Oh.
Not particularly.
That's annoying.
Because I know he did play for Chelsea and all that, but he went for Man City and Arsenal and several teams, Bolton as well. But yes, number 3, probably the most difficult. But number 4, you've got to get it.
Liam, don't say that. French. I want to say another Chelsea player, but I just can't see him scoring as many as Eric Cantona. I'm going to say Malouda.
Going to say Florent Malouda.
Yeah.
Florent Malouda is 10th in the list with 35 goals in the Premier League.
It's probably all in one season as well.
I will give you one more guess.
Okay.
So you've had 5 guesses.
This is painful. There's got to be another Arsenal player in there somewhere. The amount of French players they had. I don't think it's Patrick Vieira. I'm going to go with Perez.
You're so close. He's number 6 with 62 goals. So the top 5: Thierry Henry, number 1, 175 goals. Nicolas Anelka, number 2, 125 goals. Number 3, Louis Saha with 85 Premier League goals. Number 4, here it comes, mate. Olivier Giroud, Chelsea player, 81 goals. 81 goals in the Premier League.
I didn't
not bad going, really.
Yeah, I would have said he's had that many.
Eric Cantona, number 5 with 70, and then to fill out the top 10, if you want, you've got Robert Perez. Robert Perez was 62, so he was 8 goals behind.
Yeah.
And then you've got Anthony Martial, actually, with 48, is now 7th. It also in the top 10, you've got Steve Malbranc, Samir Nasri, and then Florent Malouda. And then if you want to go even further down, you've got Charlton Zogbia, who's 15th with 28 goals. There you go. William Gallas is 18th with 25 goals. So there's some odd names in there. But yeah, there's your top 5 for this week. So well done. You got 3 out of 5.
Well, I got 3, which is 3 better than what I got last week. So
an improvement. So yeah, let's hope next week you can go one step further.
I don't think I would have ever got Saha. I don't think I might have said Giroud had I had like about 5 or 6 more guesses, but I don't think I ever would have got Saha. Unfortunately,
no, Saha was quite tough. I never thought he'd scored that many, but yeah,
he did play for. He scored quite a few for Fulham, and then he didn't do half bad at Man United either, did he? So
no, and he was around for a while because he was with Everton as well for a bit, I suppose. I don't know how many goals he really got there. But...
He was actually really underrated as a football player. I always thought he was really good. And he was never really spoken about as being one of the top sort of footballers when he was about. But yeah,
there you go.
All right, well, better luck next week, eh?
Yep.
And next week we don't have to talk about Liverpool, so
No, we don't. No,
that's good.
they've won the title now. Let's forget about it. Move on
Yeah,
to next.
yeah, we don't need to do anything about them anymore. So yeah, so that is it for this week. Like I said, we'll be back next week with more of what you've heard today. Anything else, Liam?
Nope, nothing else from me.
No? Okay, so we will see you next week.